All right, welcome to the Week 2 Forum. This week we're really kind of jumping into the heart of the matter. What did the framers have in mind when they constructed the office of the presidency? And what we do know for sure is that they weren't really clear. As both Articles 2 and 3, um, the framers were kind of vague about what the role they were supposed to play. And a big part of that is the idea of, executive power. What did executive power mean? The chief executive shall have the executive power. There's a vagueness in that, um, and we're not sure because the vesting clause in Article 2 is a little bit different from the vesting clause in Article 1. In Article 1, it pretty much does create this sense of what the power, what the legislative power would be. But what we do know is they wanted something more energetic than was occurring under the Articles of Confederation. A number of other issues were addressed, and I know for several of the members, they were very worried about the idea of a single executive, that they would have preferred some kind of council. Um, they ultimately did agree on on a singular executive, and that was largely the result of the role that James Wilson played. Um, what was the idea? What kind of powers was a president going to have? You know, what is the veto power? What is the pardoning power? What were the, what do we think that the framers had in mind with the scope of those powers? Let's see. Um, we talked about the vesting clause. Um, what is the difference between an executive power and an executive duty? Presidents have both, uh, listed in Article 2. There are certain things that they are expected to do, and then there are certain things, certain powers that they enjoy that they can exercise. What's the difference between that? With the forums, keep in mind, a big part of this initial thing that you have to do, this 75-word summary post that you have to post by Tuesday, is, on the one hand, I want you to demonstrate that you've read the chapter, the assigned reading for the week. But on the other hand, I want you to bring, your confusion. If there's something that's in the text that you don't get, I want you to use that initial post to ask questions. Questions are a good way for me to identify areas where students are having problems, and that hopefully can make a much more productive dialogue as we go through the week. Um, there's also the idea that presidents have a power to ignore certain things within their constitutional duties. Well, first of all, they have the take care clause, which basically says when Congress passes a law, the president has to take care to execute it. But presidents also have a certain amount of discretion, as we found out with, Obama's decision regarding the children of undocumented immigrants. The whole, the DACA, the Deferred Action on immigrants. And that's something that a lot of conservatives argue. Well, that's him not taking care. Um, but that's part of the interesting aspect of the office of the presidency, right? There's a lot of gray. It's not a lot of black and white. There's a certain amount of black and white, but there's also a lot of gray in between. And Obama's actions on that, is one of those things. And a lot of constitutional scholars have said, yeah, he stepped over the line, and a lot of, some have said, well, no, he does have that kind of discretion. That presidents have a certain amount of what we might call administrative discretion. It's a term that's more often used with regard to bureaucratic agencies than to the executive branch. Um, talk a little bit about the origins of, for example, in 1793, Washington issues the Neutrality Proclamation. This actually provokes a firestorm of controversy at the time because, uh, some folks said, well, this is obviously within the president's purview to conduct foreign policy. But some members of Congress, including James Madison, argued that this was stepping on a pre-existing treaty with a foreign power, with France. And so, how that controversy got resolved went a long way towards shaping the future of presidential, actions, especially with regard to the president's ability to make declarations. Um, I think in the text they say that by 1823, when the Monroe Doctrine was articulated, nobody really challenged the president's ability to make those kinds of statements. So these are some of the things that I want you to think about as you read the material and as you participate in this initial forum that we're going to be doing. Always remember, class is only as good as you make it, right? As students, if you ask the right questions, if you're engaged, if you work through these issues carefully, I think you'll get a lot out of these forums. So let's have a good week of discussion.